What's up, Bone Ponies? We're here bringing another great episode to your eardrums. Possibly, even if you're looking else, you'll be able to see some beautiful faces.
Your precious eyes.
Yes. But we're here talking about some chase sequences in your tabletop RPGs. I am here being your beautiful introduction host, Neil, and I got my boys
Steven?
Cody.
and our special guest, which some of you may recognize from being originally a part of this.
Part of the 4-piece nugget.
And his name is
Frank.
Yeah. But yeah, we're all here to talk about chase sequences and all different aspects of that in a tabletop RPG. It can be a pretty wild time.
Yeah.
Wild
Absolutely.
time.
Pretty wild time.
I think it's I think probably just for starters, it's a good tool for overlords to incorporate into their game sessions, especially if they're looking to shake things up or add a little more action to something without maybe necessarily getting involved in a combat.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good way to maybe help move a story along.
Yes.
You know?
Well, I think also, you know, as a fan of Tolkien, he uses chase sequences actually a lot in a lot of his writing, because it now gives you that driving force of why you can't hang out forever. You know, if you have a big bad evil guy, and he's working on a prophecy, really, like, you don't have a timetable. You just know, well, this prophecy is going to happen. We have to stop it. They're working at it. You don't know when it's going to happen or anything like that. So sometimes adding in that chase sequence to add that time frame as a tangible thing the players can see, I think works out very well.
Yeah.
That's great, Neil, but I have a question. How do we start one?
Whoa. There's a plethora of ways.
A plethora?
Plethora. That's actually a dinosaur from the Jurassic period. Yeah. But
someone please fact check that.
I'm fact checking it. To be determined.
Wow.
That's a.
Well, okay. So you mentioned Tolkien, right?
So you have Tolkien.
So if we've said this before, but basically the whole voyage of the Fellowship through the mines of Moria is a fantastic chase sequence.
Beautiful. Huge. Massive chase sequence.
The Nazgul themselves provide a constant threat that the Fellowship is trying to avoid and trying to hide from and keep ahead of.
Yeah.
On the reverse side of that, you have the three hunters in Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli who are pursuing.
They are chasing
a group of foes. They are the chasers.
Yeah, the chasees are Uruk-hai.
Yeah,
and some orcs, but meat.
Some Mordor.
Meat will be back on the menu.
Sure.
Yeah.
We don't take orders from Mordor rats.
Yep. Yeah. Maggoty bread. 3 stinking days.
Let's Star Wars. You could do the same thing in Star Wars. You have a large Imperial capital ship chasing down your fighter or your cargo ship. In one of the more recent Star Wars movies, that was a thing. That was a big thing where the First Order was essentially just firing shots at a fleeing vehicle because they knew they had them. And that was it was a little drawn out in the movie, personally, I think, but that's
they made some really great rules on trying to escape.
And I mean, even in more recent stuff with Star Wars, there's the new Ben Kenobi series, and there's the whole chase sequence where he's on a planet trying to save Leia, and he's running along the rooftops while a bunch of bounty hunters are going after him, and he's getting shot at. And all that other stuff.
And another interesting thing about chases too is he also had assistants. So that's another area we can cover while we're talking about it, because
exactly,
you had Kumail Nanjiani's character come in and he was able to distract them long enough for Obi-Wan to get far enough away. So granted, it failed.
But it's still an attempt. Some rolls weren't made well.
He accomplished what he was attempting to do, which was slow down that one lady who was trying to get him. But
she found out where he was.
that is
enough time to get away, and
that is totally something that could be, incorporated, and even if you had like a split party where somebody's being pursued and
some Scooby-Doo chasing
is trying to help them or trying to trip up the pursuer.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. There's aspects that can change drastically throughout.
Yeah.
But the big thing you got to do in a chase, I think, to elevate it to the next level, it's not just simply a aspect of, here's the enemies running 30 feet to you or 60 feet to you, you're running 60 feet away. Pierce some pop shots. Nah, use your environment. If you're, playing Star Wars or some space setting TTRPG, throw in an asteroid field. You're going through an asteroid field to try and lose the pursuers. Now you got to make, some piloting maneuvers. You got to make sure you don't get hit. Well, maybe they shoot an asteroid and now it becomes, a bunch of small stuff. Oh boy, it changes everything. You know what I mean? Like having that dynamic aspect, I think is what's going to elevate your chase sequence, no matter where it is.
That's something about a chase sequence that I think makes it way more different than combat and make it more dynamic, is that it's essentially you're just putting a bunch of skill checks back to back to back and potentially granting, penalties to your players because they have to do them quickly. It's not just jump from one building to another. It's you have to make this jump right now. So, you don't get to like calculate it out in your head and figure out like how far you have to back up and make the running jump. You have to just do it. You're trying to pick a lock so that you get into a door for a chance to hide. Well, you have to do that in one turn. And if you don't do it, then you have to figure out something else. You have to jump, you have to, hide yourself in a thing. You have to do it really quick, and you might get some kind of a penalty because you may not be able to hide yourself very well in a quick situation. And it's all these different, you're providing a bunch of different options to your players to give them different ways of escaping or continuing the chase, but continuing to elude their pursuers. That makes it different from combat, where it's just like you're doing different attacks, you're doing different defensive maneuvers. Now you're actually using your skills rather than your attacks and spells and things like that.
I think it's important too to add on to what you guys are saying is you do not have to treat it as a linear progression or a flat grid surface of yes, you move 30 feet, they move 30 feet.
Yeah.
No, you can switch it up. You can also switch the environments up. Yeah, I've done a chase sequence in our Tallaraxia game where it went from a forest up to a mountains. Then there was a storm that took place.
Oh, storm.
Yeah, like the fog rolled in. You guys couldn't see. There was all sorts of aspects that kept it moving along. And the other thing I think is, I think it's a good way too to also show maybe the size of an enemy, like in a literary sense, without just absolutely destroying your party.
To be able to show the numbers of an area. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I mean, think about we already mentioned the escape from Moria and from Khazad Dûm, and after Gandalf falls, I know spoilers, everybody, but after Gandalf falls, shut up, Kenobi.
I still have to catch up on that. How dare you?
Well, then you need to leave. You just need to leave this chat. But as they leave, they want to rest because they're exhausted. They just lost their leader, essentially, their friend. They want to potentially, like in a game sense,
they want to grieve.
I want to take a long rest right now, right?
No.
And immediately Aragorn's like, we cannot stay here because what's going to happen? We're going to be severely outnumbered, and they're going to kill us.
Yeah.
Like, so we need to move. And I've
By
done
nightfall,
that before.
this whole ridge will be covered in goblins.
Yeah, and I've done that before in games where I'm like, okay, yeah, you basically kick the hornet's nest. Now you have to deal with the stings.
Well, and back to like kind of what you were saying though too. It depicts, because sometimes it's very difficult as an overlord to depict to your party like, hey, fighting's not gonna work here. Figure it out quick. And chase sequences allow you to do that hopefully very well for the party, because that whole Casa Doom run, there's literally goblins climbing down from the ceiling, any structure, anything they can see, they see the enemy. They're
taking pot shots from way away,
wherever, they're and the goblins, all they're trying to do is just, they don't care about the resource that it takes to kill these people. They're just trying to get them. There's no logic to it, and it's just chaos. And to bring that, like, you can bring that in several different settings. You can do it urban, you can do it through the mountains, like we said. But the key feature there is you should keep your party guessing. Once your party thinks they have a way and they're going to get away, that's when you should be like, oh, the walkway starts to fall apart, and now you have to balance this so you do not fall and your party can jump to the other side. Like,
right. Or you have to block the way of the chasers.
Yes.
You have to prevent them from getting to you.
Yeah.
So you have to sabotage the door. You have to blow up the bridge behind you.
Yep.
Like there's a way that you can incorporate a lot of different aspects of the game and skills, and without having to just be full on combat, but you can also incorporate combat. You can have an enemy come running out of the bush that they didn't see, because the enemy's gaining on them.
Yeah.
And I would like to state that this is also a good aspect. We've talked about it before. Colville talks about it, Matt Colville. Usually in a boss setting, you have these little 1 HP squishies. That is a great thing to implement into a chase sequence, because now you want to have an enemy pop out and slow him down for a quick second, but really not do anything besides just stop them from being able to run away. Allow the horde maybe to catch up, or a bunch of gangsters if you're playing in a modern setting, whatever it may be, who are catching up. And this just allows them to get that much closer and adds that panic to your party. But it takes one hit and that person's done or knocked unconscious or whatever it may be. But it keeps them guessing. It keeps them doing different things. That's the other aspect I think we should hit on.
And I would also advise that when you're doing this sort of thing, like with a chase, treat it like when we talked about like with the cinematic, like the cinematic sequences, like in your games. You do not have to worry about every stat, every, HP, AC, whatever. Like you're saying, Neil, okay, 3 goblins come running out of the bush, right? And your character swings and, you rolled really well. Yes, you drop one of the goblins.
Yep.
I don't have to look at the stats. I don't have to sit there because they're not the real. That's not the real threat. That's not the real. That's not the real point of what I'm trying to do. And it adds to the feel of like, oh, this is epic.
Yeah.
Like this is moving along and this is epic. Yeah. And I think what we were saying before, like, keep them guessing, keep switching things up, use the environment, use your skills, and then that's a good opportunity as well to have your teammates and your different players do things. What happens if during this chase, one of your players falls and breaks their leg?
Yeah.
Or they get knocked out because a boulder fell and hit them or whatever. Now you have to...
Frank's like, nah, we put him down here.
We're done. We can't afford to carry him.
See you later.
Yeah.
But, like, there's a lot you could do. That now you have to worry about this person. You have to carry them as well.
Yeah, and it makes it so you make it so hopefully your party gets away with the right decisions, but it's not just gonna be an easy we just run. You know what I mean? Yeah, we know this force is behind us, but as long as we make it over there, we're fine. No, they got to start on the fly thinking of plans C through Z because 27 things happen in between.
And depending on the game that you're playing, just running might be a temporary solution, but it might not be a permanent one.
Correct. Yeah.
You could be playing a game in like close quarters. Like I was just thinking about like examples of chase sequences, and the one that came into my mind is the recent remake of Resident Evil 2. That entire game is a chase sequence because you got Mr. X chasing you around Raccoon City Police Department the entire game. That whole game is a giant chase sequence where there is a unkillable enemy constantly on your heels, and you have to be moving and running while zombies are coming after you, and all this other stuff is attacking you. You have to be solving puzzles. You have to be, finding your way through and doing all this stuff while this one dude is chasing after you.
Yeah, no, that's a good one too.
But if you're playing a game that takes place like you're trapped in a small area and there's a small force of creatures or a large force of creatures or a single big creature that's constantly dogging you, you're going to have to figure out ways to solve whatever you're trying to accomplish to beat the game while avoiding this one threat that is constantly going to be coming after you. And as the Overlord, you could easily make that a challenge by simply saying that the creature is very, very loud, and then suddenly it's very, very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
You hear this thing stomping around upstairs, and you know that when you hear it stomping around, it's time to hide, it's time to go someplace. And then all of a sudden you're walking down a hallway, and then you turn the corner and it's right there, and you go, I didn't hear it. Why didn't I hear it? And it's like, well, it changed up its tactics. It learned from you,
Yeah, just like you learned from it learns from you. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can.
This is making me think too of Call of Cthulhu. Because I think in that system, you are less likely to engage with an enemy than you would be in like Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. Yeah. And they really incorporated that in 7th edition and then in Pulp Cthulhu, where they have actual tables for driving away from an enemy, from running away from enemies, and different things you can have happen because you're pretty much the squishy in those games.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you're just a little minion. But like Frank, what was one of your favorite chase sequences that you either did as an Overlord or as a that you experienced as a player? I know I'm putting you on the spot now.
Yeah, way to not prime me before we started.
I didn't want to. I want the emotional wrecking of your brain as you try and figure this out.
So there's two that ring to mind just because they were more recent. The first one was actually very recent. It was when we were doing a Star Wars campaign. Everybody had 2 minutes to get into the base, get around the base, get to the command center, and stop it before a transmission went out. Because everything shut down. So by the time they landed, got in there, running around, they were still on the clock. They didn't know this, but I was still tallying and everything like that. They did make it to the final room and obliterated the entire room on the last turn for that before the transmission would be sent out. So that was a good one.
True heroes. Like true heroes.
Yes. If it's what I'm thinking of, yes. Like true heroes.
Yeah. I had players, because there was only one player character in the event, but everybody else was playing groups of NPCs, and I brought the action economy down. So if there were a group of NPCs, it was like one shot, they'd go down. So their NPCs are versing other NPCs in a firefight. And once somebody got hit, they were done.
Yeah.
So that kind of helped motivate people to move quickly, already have a plan before they opened up the door for the next room to just do what they had to do.
Yeah, it modified the pace of the sequence.
Yeah, and it really pushed along the whole thing, and that was one of the best RPG nights I've had in like over a decade, I feel.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of fun. Steve was doing some crazy RP. We're not going to get into that tonight.
Yeah, let's not.
Let's
just say true heroism is one way of describing how we solve that problem.
You shall be eternal, shiny and chrome.
But then Cody was playing his character Kill Raza, and he was trying to make his way through, and he's still rolling regularly, so he would still deal damage the way that it would normally be dealt. And even when he got shot, he got hit with a critical hit, so he's like bleeding a little bit. Everybody's freaking out because his character just got shot. It just was a overall really good one. Another one, which is actually with you guys, before we started doing all the podcasting and everything, we were kind of just testing out like a night of playing together for potential
recording, potential live streaming and whatnot.
And I think we were all, like sipping libations and stuff like that, just having a good time. And we did this modern style scenario. And for some reason, something that wasn't a chase sequence turned into a chase sequence where I think, what was it? Cody and Steve. Was Sean playing with us that night?
Sean was not with us. It was
four. Okay, yeah. So Cody and Steve, I believe, were in one car going to the one location, and Neil, you were on your motorcycle.
I was on my motorcycle.
And they kind of figured out, oh, that's right, because the police were involved. You guys were also cops. They knew you were going to break up this whole, little underground operation that they had going on.
Yep.
And they had allies in there. So they're trying to stop you guys before you get to the location, but you guys are completely separated. So there's explosions going off, gunfights all over the place. And then eventually that brought everybody to the same location. And then Neil, using his expert door breaching skills, got in there. It was
taught by the police department of Palmer's Grove. It's a one-way breaching technique.
You need a ride home after you do it.
Well, it depends how you breach, but usually, yeah.
So for those listening, just so you're not in the what the F territory, pretty much Neil blew the door open and his motorcycle went flying in there, wheeling. He rolled so damn high it wasn't even funny. Took out like 3 people, and then they move into the next area, guns blazing. It was a good night.
Completely cleared that area too. It was a perfect breach.
Breach cleared.
We spent more time like doing the chase sequence to get to the location than we did in the location.
It was a good one, because you were just supposed it's really funny because it was an aspect of us as players creating a chase sequence with what Frank gave us, because it was originally like just people slowing us down, like stopping us and being like, hey, where are you headed, like trying to make small talk. And we're like, nah, you're on to us.
Wasn't it start with like some guy just asking us what we were up to, and like we like
pretty much
we like beat their ass, and then like a bunch of cops showed up, and we were like,
listen, he was mad sus.
It was because like there was one person who pulled me over and then pulled somebody over, and I was there, and I was like, all right, I gotta like show my part, I can't let people know, and I went to help, and then they're like, no, you're staying here forever, and I was like, no, this motorcycle's got something to breach.
And the whole goal of what the police chief and the people under him were trying to do is, since it is in Palmer's Grove, USA, undisclosed city, it can be everywhere, anywhere. Palmer's Grove is a city of corruption and horrible things, so people are very hard to trust. Yeah, you only can trust the players, pretty much.
Well, and even then,
they figured it out. That's true.
But that was a good one. That was just, and like, it's an aspect that like I think a lot of people get nervous of doing chase sequences or big like cinematic events as a overlord, because they think they have to plan a lot. And I think there are certain aspects and there's certain ones that you want to make sure you hit perfectly and you do well, like the one you were talking about for Star Wars. Like there was a session of planning prior to the session of going in there, and I think that's a good step. But don't be scared because your party tries to murder hobo in a town to that could easily create a chase sequence, either with people tied to the people they tried to kill in a non legal lawship way, or now you're in trouble with the law, and maybe these guards now stretch, it's not just this town, it's going to impact you everywhere.
Oh yeah, okay. So you have a group of players that want to turn into murder hobos, right? And they're like, oh well, the 4 of us against 1 guard isn't much of a challenge. No, it's not much of a challenge, but 30 guards coming after you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now you can't be in town. You got to get out. Well, now who's to say they're not going to send word to other towns?
Exactly.
Where's guilds in this situation? If you mess up with a shopkeeper, is that shopkeeper going to put out there bounties? Oh, it's a plethora. You just opened the floodgates, and plethora is my word of the day today.
I'm going to use myriad.
Oh,
synonymous.
That's a pretty good one.
It's my own one.
That is. Yeah.
Another thing, is especially if you do have murder hobos, this is a fun little game to play. It's called NPC CSI, because if you're going in there and you got this flaming sword and you whack some dude, they're gonna see scorch marks. Now you're starting to build up these enemies. Maybe he was a part of a guild. Maybe he was also a guard. So now you got 2 entities not really happy with you. They're going to join forces, connect with a bunch of other people. You can wait 4 or 5 campaigns down the road, and then they catch wind. Hey, there's this group of people who have been following you for many weeks now. They're right outside the door. So you might want to, I don't know, not be here.
Yeah.
And then when they, and they're going to be all like, we'll take them. Yeah, I don't think you can take 55 of these people.
Well, and they are already set up. You had no clue. You as the player had no clue that this was even happening. It's a whole sting operation.
Yeah.
But before, I think our last point here is going to be the aspect of chase sequences don't have to be, it can be a puzzle in itself. So we kind of had this one thrown at us, and another time that we were playing Pulp Cthulhu. I think actually, Frank, your character didn't get involved in this because they were smart enough to stay out of the sketchy smoke bomb. If gas is coming through the vents, it was. It ended up being your detriment. This is true.
Yeah.
But if sketchy gas is coming through the vents, don't trust it. Or do what you got to do. It's your
breathe deep.
Yeah. We had a type of platformer in a way, chase. Cody was the overlord, and that was pretty interesting because there was aspects of you learn this information pretty forthcoming that your enemy moves 2 spaces to your 1, and they are X amount of spaces away from you. How do you do this? And there
makes it a countdown.
Yeah,
eventually.
And there was aspects that, well, if you roll this well, you do get to move 2, but on average you get to move 1, and if you absolutely suck, you don't move at all. And it was pretty cool because there was points and times where it was yep, I made the jump. Oh no, I messed up so bad. I went to the wrong path. And because there's a whole gravitational pull thing, but in a way we were island hopping in a space corridor against space cats.
They were space cats.
They were giant space cats, and they there was a point in time and we're playing Pulp Cthulhu, which if anybody who has never played Cthulhu, again, it's a very squishy type of system. You really aren't meant to fight anything that's not human, and even the humans will get you. Never go up against an elder god. Never go up against space kitties.
No.
Oh yeah, no, I can tell you firsthand.
Pulp Cthulhu makes
Space cats will get you.
Yeah.
Space cats will get you hard.
Pulp Cthulhu tries to make it a little bit more manageable. Your players are a little tougher. They can withstand a little bit more, but still, it's nowhere near like D&D.
No,
like,
and
you're not going to go up and you are not going to go up and holy smite Cthulhu.
No,
because he's just going to look
try
at you and your brain's going to explode.
Yeah.
Like,
and there was an aspect that these space kitties were catching up. I think it was me and you, Steve, right? In this NPC.
Was there an NPC with us?
Yeah.
I think
because it was the guy who we were trying to find. He was there.
Okay.
And like they started catching up, and my character was like kind of like a fighter, and I was like, I'll fight a cat while you can escape. And he got slapped once, and I was like, all right, not happening anymore. We're running.
Yeah. I remember that they caught me, and I think they killed me in like 2 hits. It was insane. Those things were so powerful.
Yeah, it was wild. But it was like really cool because Cody even had like there was different paths you could take. There was it was very interesting, and it changed a movement system. And you don't have to be scared. It simplified it in a way. Instead of worrying about they move 30 feet each turn, I got to keep that in mind. No, it's just you move from one island to the next. Unless you roll really well, then you can move 2. And then also the kitties have roll aspects if you want to make it even more interesting, where they can fail a jump or they just naturally move 2. And it's another aspect of a chase sequence that's not so I don't know, just focus on running or skill checks. Like there's still skill checks there, but there's also an aspect you can make it a path, you can make it a maze. All right, you know that if you go to this area, you may be 2 times ahead of them, but it's twice as difficult. Do you take the risk or you continue going down the way? Give choices to your players, I think, in a chase sequence, and allow them to kind of make the mistake.
Environmental hazards are good to use for a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
Traps are great. Somebody's foot gets caught in a bear trap. They then fall into quicksand and then get hit with 8 arrows. Like, it's a good way.
I think they're dead.
Yeah, they're dead.
That killed Frank. That kills people.
Frank,
not my fighter. It won't.
But
I think a good strategy for overlords that maybe want to incorporate a chase sequence, is it's not a bad idea to like storyboard it for you to sit there and say, okay, these are the 6 or 7 things that I want to incorporate into this chase. I want to have them running down alleys. I want to have them climbing up onto the rooftop. I want to have them jumping over the roofs. I want to have one of the roofs give way where they have to scramble to avoid falling through into the building, and then there's an option. What if they do fall through? Can they get out of the building now? It's not a bad idea for you to kind of loosely string that storyboard together.
Yeah.
But I would advise to not get lost in all the little nitty gritty details, because
don't get lost in the sauce.
Important, I think the pace and the feel is more important.
Correct.
Than all of the little nitty gritty.
Yeah. And I mean, I think before we go around the room for your last food of or thought for food, however you want to say it, food for thought.
There you go.
Yeah. Is
little sugar cubes for your bone pony.
Yeah. Well, make sure you don't keep your sugar cubes in your pocket. In some states, that's illegal. That's a real rule law in the books, folks. Make sure you look it up. My last little point here is, and there's good and bad from this, but if you do it right, nobody at your table will notice. Sometimes you need to railroad your party. Sometimes they're just going all across the track, not focusing on what's at hand. A chase sequence helps push them in the right way. And sometimes you need to do that, and there's good ways to do it in a chase sequence that makes it not feel like you're railroading them.
And sometimes it is necessary too. Like I said before about like the Hornet's Nest. Like I remember being a young DM overlord playing the Lord of the Rings game, and I remember my cousins that were playing at the time. Like they were going to go into an orc fortress in a mountain, and they started messing up and started attacking people. And I was like, okay, yeah, you took out those 3 or 4 orcs. Now what are you going to do with the 400 that are coming behind them? And I didn't kill them. I didn't kill the play. I didn't, TPK the party. But I just said,
you were still young.
This is an. Oh, right. I didn't learn yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was like, it's a consequence.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a consequence, and now you have to escape this place with dungeons, the threat of
dungeons, strongholds. You don't want to linger in those places.
No,
because things could have dug too greedily.
Indeed.
But Steve, any last food for thought on this matter?
I think just to echo what everybody's been saying, just don't get too caught up in the details of things. Don't worry about specific things like movement speed and things like that. Maybe if you have a map in mind, you could have points on that map that it's characters need to get to here, and then maybe make them roll to see if they can get there before the people that are chasing them can catch up to them or something like that. But it's it doesn't matter how fast they can move. It's just they have to.
Yeah, this is encounter one of the chase type of
and
thing.
Then once they get to that point, it's okay, now you have options for what you can do at this particular place. What are you going to do? And the players can make the choices of whether they want to keep running or whether they want to hide or whether they want to, try to fight back and maybe reduce the numbers of the chase of the people that are chasing them a little bit, or whatever it is that they want to do. And then just keep on having it go until a natural stopping point for it, where they can, elude them or get caught or, just, whatever it is that you want the end result of this chase to be eventually. But yeah, I would just say plan it out, but don't plan out everything. Don't plan out every little detail, which is kind of an overall lesson for tabletop RPGs in general, is you don't want to plan out everything, but for chase sequences, there's supposed to be things that it's okay.
Oh, I advise that all the time.
Yeah, it's here's thing 1, here's thing 2, here's thing 3, here's thing 4, here's thing 5.
Yeah, you want to keep up with the speed in this.
Chase over. Yeah, you want to keep it feeling tense. You want to keep it feeling. You want to keep it moving, because otherwise, if they're sitting around for 15 minutes figuring out one step of the chase, then you lose momentum. So you want to keep that momentum going, and you want to, just kind of make it quick.
Yeah.
So that would be.
That's a good tidbit of food. Cody, what did you got anything?
I think it it's a good opportunity for you to we said about it's a good opportunity to use skills, good opportunity to use your environment, good opportunity to kind of flex what's going on in the world. If there's an enemy that is not to be trifled with, it's a good way to scare your players off for a second, is have this enemy chase them. But I think really it's a good tool for you when you're trying to run a campaign and manage a campaign. If you feel like maybe things are stagnant, or that things are slowing down, or people aren't as interested in what's going on, it doesn't hurt for you to throw something in like that. Yeah. And you can throw in a chase, or have your players chase somebody, or however you're going to do it, in lieu of continuing maybe what you had originally planned. And I said before about keeping things loosely planned, because you don't know what your friends at the table are going to do. You don't know how they're going to react to things. So it's a good idea for you to maybe just come up with concepts that you want to try to achieve during this sequence without writing it all out 100%, because somebody's going to they're going to throw a wrench in it somewhere.
Somebody's going to throw a motorcycle through a door.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
That's a good one. And last but not least, before we bring you back to the Bone Pony Stables, Frank.
Yeah, the wayward nugget himself.
Yeah.
So
what do you got?
The question I would start with is why.
Okay.
Now we've given a bunch of reasons as to how, but you need to ask, why do you need a chase in this specific moment? Cody kind of hit a couple of those on the head while he was going through, rebuilding momentum and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And then also then you get into the how you're going to do it. So if they have, an object of super importance, this magical egg that is to birth this creature that is going to fight this other thing, like you need to get it. So once they get it, now they need to get it back as quick as possible because there's a bunch of people who want that same thing. Mm-hmm. And you found it and they want it and you did all the hard stuff. And now they're coming after you.
Yep.
Or, they robbed a bank. They need to run now. They need to go. They need to get out of there. So sometimes, a lot of times, you may end up using more numbers, especially if you're not in Call of Cthulhu. Because in Call of Cthulhu, you could use one monster, and that's going to be enough to usually push everybody away.
Yeah.
But in like D&D, you might have that big giant monster. Your players are using all their, what is it though? 1 player hour or whatever they call it, where everybody just uses everything. The action hour.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, and somehow they still bring that thing down. You don't even need to follow the rules on that stuff. Like you can have it. So in this situation, it is to push them along. Neil, you were talking about railroading. So you kind of want them to be moving in this direction. Numbers is a very good way of doing that. Also, just having the threat, this existential threat of something coming in to get that as soon as they get it.
Yep.
So as soon as they get it, if you lay it out way beforehand, hey, you're going on this mission, you got to go find the thing. Once you get the thing, you need to know everybody's going to want it. Yeah. So you got to move. And then they start to build up the pace on their own. And then you read the room. That is the most important part.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have murder hobos or you have people who are going to stand and fight like a paladin or something like that. You need to figure out just enough to plant the seed, to let it grow. So once the event happens, they're moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just ask the question, why, how, and also, is it necessary? Because sometimes, like Cody had mentioned, and everybody has mentioned before on this podcast and everywhere else, your players are never going to do what you want them to do.
Yeah.
No.
Not even remotely. So always keep a few things in your back pocket. If you know this event might help push something along later, write it down, fold it up, put it in your DM binder or your little mystery pool that you pull out of for random encounters. That might help get things motivated and moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. Those are great points.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I just I was thinking about what you had said about the why, and I was thinking about how it would be fun to maybe have a chase sequence where the players and the characters are not aware as to why. You, as the DM, are aware. So I was thinking, okay, your players come along, they find someone, a person, in rough shape. They say, okay, we're going to take care of this person. This person's going to travel with us now. They don't know that this person is the last noble of a family that was just wiped out in a civil war, and that there are people constantly looking for this person. And every time the players go into a town or something, they get harassed by random people.
Yeah.
And that could be a fun way to be like, okay, now we have to figure out what the hell's going on,
Yeah.
Just a thought, just a
it's like a little mystery novel, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That also did kind of spark something in my head from many, many moons ago, where we were doing our horror campaign when we were very young. We were probably early teens at that point, and I was DMing. And we did this whole, there's this zombie apocalypse type situation going on. But
that was one of my favorite games ever.
Yeah. And there were other creatures involved and things of that nature. And using the suspense of the environment led to people being chased or running or chasing after different things, which led to different things occurring because the whole point was I was able to get under everybody's skin. It really works when you're all together, where everybody buys in before you even sit down.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it in person, light some candles, dim the lights, set the scene, do what you got to do. If you're not, if you're on the internet, you definitely want to talk about it beforehand. Hey, this is a horror campaign. Here's what I want to do. And then you want to set the scene. Every scene becomes more important. The enemy, not so much. Like Neil was saying earlier, the squishies, the 1 to 2 hit wonders that come out. You whack them twice, they pop or whatever. That's all great. That'll definitely help. It's less thinking you have to do, because if it only takes 1 or 2 hits, it's not that big of a problem to keep track of. You can have a lot of them. You can have a few of them. They can have this effect that, like a zombie if they bite you, or like some kind of weird creature.
Something that makes them a little dangerous, but is easy to keep track of.
Yeah, and
even the unknown, like something like Cthulhu, like in the Cthulhu games, like having some sort of monster that you can't accurately, like, no matter how you describe it, it doesn't make sense to the players, or they can't figure out what it is, and they just see this thing like devastating things. That's motivation to get moving, to beat feet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and just using different types of elements to keep it moving is definitely going to help you out. So using the horror aspect of things, that's a really good motivator. Or just setting a goal, like, all right, before we even start, the goal is to save Christmas. You have 5 hours to save Santa. So if you set a timer, that's always a good thing.
Even
at this point, if we're going to play for 4 hours, right? So I'm going to set a timer for 2 hours. So while we're moving through the campaign, there are certain things when we're coming up with plans and everything, the timer is moving. If we take a break, we stop the clock.
Yeah.
I
was even thinking about with that goal thing, like you mentioned, like, you get an egg and there's people after you because this egg is going to hatch and whatever. The alternate chase for that could be, you have to get this thing back before it hatches. It's going to hatch in 3 days. You've got to get back in 3 days, or else this thing is going to be hatched, and then it's going to grow into a full-grown monster unless you bring it to a specific person who knows how to stop that from happening. And
I think using time,
that's a chase in itself.
I think using time to motivate chases and to motivate that style of play is a great idea.
Yeah.
I think that's also a good topic for us maybe for next time, is talk about like actually like how to use time like as an overlord. Like Frank, you had mentioned before, like with that space mission, you had 2 minutes and we weren't aware of it. You were aware of it, that we had 2 minutes to get shit done, essentially. And you could do the same thing, even like like Steve was just saying, you could have like a sort of a countdown to be like, hey, in an hour, this place is going to be crawling with enemies, So we have to get in here, we have to do what we have to do, and we have to get out.
I mean, you of all people know about countdowns with Toleraxia, Cody, because it's like everything in that is just a series of timers counting down.
Well, I even have a bigger time countdown, and that is our podcast time for today. We are sadly out of time because we don't want to bore you for too long.
You invite me back. You keep me here for 5 minutes. Now you're booting me to the road.
Well, that's it. We gotta keep them. We gotta keep them hooked. Make them come back for the next time. But
Neil, you're just chasing me out, buddy. You're just chasing me out.
It's a chase both ways. I chase you, you chase me. It's a love-hate thing,
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know about the hate part.
Yeah, I don't know. But Frank, thank you very much for coming in. For everybody else who's listened, thank you very much. Make sure to come over to our website, any of our social medias. Make sure you keep track of what we're doing. Join us on Patreon if you want some exclusive content. And then if you're looking for some pretty good adventures, we also have those two over at our Drive-Thru-RPG page. You can get adventures. We will soon be putting up some map packs, some pretty good stuff that's worth the gander.
Y'all got map packs?
We will be. We are
getting them map packs pretty soon. Yep.
We are getting them all set up, and they will be coming out in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah.
What kind of?
Oh, battle maps, stronghold maps, a little bit of everything.
Everything. And and keep an eye on stuff, because there's going to be some big things coming in the future.
Wow.
That's some stuff.
Listeners, I got your back. I'm gonna try to hold them here as long as possible. Tell me about these battle packs. Tell me about these.
Well, we will continue to discuss those after we sign off.
Oh,
Thanks again.
Wow.
Thanks
Wow.
again, all Bone Ponies and
Ranch hands, bone ponies.
Yeah, it's
Everybody who helps out on the ranch.
It's been a good time. The chase is not over, but this sequence is. And we'll catch you next time, Bone Ponies.
Ride forth, and conquer, Bone Ponies.
Yeah.
And as always, continue to get ranched.
I would, you know what? Last thing.
I am about to hit this button.
You
right now.
do not have to be the fastest. You just have to be faster than the slowest person in a chase.
Ugh.